Well, I think AI is here to stay, would be my first statement. We're seeing in the marketplace, AI runs on data. The AI outcomes really depend on having entirely good data quality, availability, and certainly governance. Data is very much a business priority. We're seeing this closely tied to business growth, risk management, and certainly competitive advantage. Many organizations are still stuck in pilot mode. Fixing the data infrastructure should come first, as investing in AI tools, without a strong data foundation often leads to either duplication or replication of that data and certainly some wasted spend.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tuesdays with Trailblazers, brought to you by TechEdge AI, the video podcast where we bring you the latest trends and insights in AI and technology. I'm your host, Sadesh, and today we have with us Mark Fioretto, AVP and Managing Director at NetApp. Mark's leadership brand is built on a collaborative and transparent mode of operation that insists on customer advocacy, high ethics, and integrity. So, without further ado, let's welcome Mark. Hey, Mark, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you, Sid. Thank you, and great to be here.
So, Mark, I'm sure all the budding future executives would be keen to know more about you. So, could you tell us a bit more about yourself and probably one tip you'd love to share with the next generation?
Thanks, Sid. Yeah, so I've been in the industry for many, many years now. I don't want to date myself, but I've worked in a number of organizations on the infrastructure side as well as in the software side of the industry, and had the great privilege of working in the partner organization space as well in the enterprise and now in leadership roles over the last 15 years. So very privileged that industry that really has, been the center part of my working career. And certainly as technology has evolved, so too as the value that we've been able to give back to customers and to partners alike. If I was to give one snippet of the future generation for IT, it's really that this is a magnificent industry that provides a lot of opportunities and meaningful work, whether you are contributing towards social initiatives or whether you're helping solve corporate or government challenges. There are fantastic opportunities in the IT organizations in this industry.
Well, that's very well said, Mark. Now, let's start with a question many leaders are quietly asking, how do you know if your data foundation is actually ready for AI and not just something that looks, good on paper?
Yeah, it's a good question, Sid. Look, many organizations are still stuck in pilot mode. A 2025 report, The State of AI, done by McKinsey, really highlights the inconsistency in the gap between experimentation and scale deployments. And this really comes back to data challenges. The real readiness shows up in the consistency and accessibility of AI ready data and in the environments that are not just about, volumes of storage or capacity. So my suggestion here is for organizations that are trying to assess where they are in the journey, look for operational proof points such as production AI workloads that are running reliably with governed and secure data pipelines.
Well, that's great to know about. Now, budgets are tight everywhere, right? So if you had to choose, should leaders invest in AI tools or, fix their data infrastructure first?
Yeah, from my perspective and from what we're seeing in the marketplace, AI runs on data. So in other words, the AI outcomes really depend on having entirely good data quality, availability, and certainly governance, increasingly so. So fixing the data infrastructure should come first, as investing in AI tools, without a strong data foundation often leads to either duplication or replication of that data and certainly some wasted spend. 2 or 3 years ago, the conversation was around storage was largely about capacity. But in today's intelligent data era, the infrastructure has evolved from a passive system to a record of active intelligence layer. So a data platform that connects, protects, and governs, that really activates and drives value out of your AI projects.
Well, that's interesting. Now, Mark, there's also a lot of talk about, bringing everything into one system. So, in simple terms, how does a unified approach actually help leaders manage security, performance, and cost?
Yeah. And Sid, I touched on this a little bit in the previous question. Fragmented data environments duplicate effort, cost, and they create inconsistent security postures. So, we're seeing about nearly 80% of enterprise data these days is unstructured, file, image, audio, video, etc. And this is really expanding exponentially as we start to increase and introduce more sensors, as the apps platforms tend to grow, and certainly as AI pipelines are growing. So the challenge really isn't about storage, it's about unifying, indexing, and governing that sprawl into AI ready data sets. So a unified platform really provides organizations with a single consistent view that enables them to gain control over their data, whether it's on premise or in the major hyperscalers. And that helps simplify the management and improve the governance. And as a result of that, reduces complexity.
Well, that's great to know. Now, for many companies, though, right, Mark, the challenge is complexity, like you suggested. It just feels too big to fix. Where should they actually start?
I think the first place to start is to assess where your data currently lives. Identifying silos in your organization and on your on premise, both in your on premise and on cloud environments, and then focus on consolidating that data under a single management platform or an operating model, rather than adding more tools to try and monitor or look at these different silos of data. So then really, I would say prioritizing a small number of high impact use cases that can guide those architecture decisions and prove out whether you have the availability, accessibility, and that governance around that data layer before scaling larger and more AI projects.
Got it. Now, tell me, Mark, I mean, are you seeing certain industries in, ANZ moving faster when it comes to using data more strategically? And how is, NetApp a part of the equation?
Yes, certainly we're seeing AI being talked about and tested by many different industries and many different organizations, but certainly in the financial services and the telecommunications industry, it's being transformed by regulatory requirements and certainly competitive pressures where they're trying to personalize services. So we're seeing a large uptake and a lot of work being done in those two particular sectors. Public sector and healthcare is also another area where we're seeing AI projects accelerating, particularly driven around, data driven services and delivery of those services to the community, and certainly from an operational efficiency perspective. Now, from a NetApp standpoint, we come back to that core fundamental that we believe, which is, data is at the core of the delivery of AI projects and AI models. And so having your data sets ready, accessible, and secure, again, whether they're on-prem or in the cloud or a hybrid of those two, which is for most organizations how they're positioned as far as where their applications and their data are sitting. That's a critical stepping stone and a first fundamental to really driving efficiency, regardless of what industry or what AI project you're trying to deliver.
Those were some wonderful insights. But I just, if you don't mind, I have one question and pretty much could be a generic one. And what's your, verdict on AI, probably in the next 5 years? Where do you see it going? Not just from a NetApp standpoint or a data standpoint. Just it could be general, it could be generic, but it can also shed some light on the data aspect of it.
Yeah. Well, I think AI is here to stay, would be my first statement. So, companies are embracing AI for all of its value and for what it potentially can deliver. So, what I see in 5 years is, the evolution of AI from today, what is, I wouldn't say experimental mode, but certainly it is in pilot mode for a lot of organizations to really understand what they can extract from these AI models versus the cost and the implementation requirements of them. So, as like a lot of technology trends, if we think back now a number of years and go back to when converged networks first started, there'll be a pattern that'll evolve or that will emerge. And so you'll start to see, I suspect, what we would say is some standardized models for rolling AI out, where a formula gets agreed as or gets accepted as a best practice, or there'll be two or three best practices that you can follow. And that will be the way that companies will adopt AI. And when we see that, then I think we're really going to start to see an acceleration of scale deployments. Today, I think there's still a lot of companies are grappling with what am I trying to deliver? How easy or hard is that? It's coming back to, again, being objective about it, but it's coming back to, can I get to the right data in the right time without massive duplication or replication of this data? And so once that formula gets worked out, Sid, I think you're going to see an acceleration of the adoption of AI in many, many different ways, in many different.
Well, that was my best piece, to be honest. And I love the unfiltered questions just for this because, you get so much of nuggets out of it and so much of information. So really love that answer, to be honest. That's a take I haven't heard in a long time. So thank you so much for that, Mark. Now I just want to switch gears and probably introduce a rapid fire round in this podcast. So, probably quick answers only. Let me know whenever you're ready.
Ready to go.
Okay. What proves your data is truly AI ready?
The ability to access that data wherever it is in your organization, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, in the same way with the guiding principles of them being secure and governed.
Okay. How does unified data simplify daily decisions?
Unified data simplifies it because you don't have to have multiple processes. You have the one process, you have the one protocol around how you access that data, how it's managed, and certainly how it's visible to those particular AI.
Great. And finally, is data now a business priority or is it still a tech issue?
Well, data is very much a business priority. We're seeing this closely tied to business growth, risk management, and certainly competitive advantage. And so, you see the appointment of chief data officers more commonly now. We also know that boards are more engaged and trying to understand the company's data platforms and data strategy because this has to do with regulatory scrutiny, cybersecurity, and certainly the delivery of value through those AI models. So absolutely, data is more top of mind for the senior executives in most organizations.
Great. As I said, some wonderful insights out there, Mark. Thank you so much for all these wonderful insights. I really enjoyed hosting you on our podcast Tuesdays with Trailblazers. And thank you all for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe us and leave us a review. Until next time, stay tuned with TechEdge AI for more insights. Until we meet for the next time, signing off, your host, Siddesh.